Welcome back, everybody. Super glad to be joined by Coach Roye once again as our co-host. Today we have a special guest, Mike Dunham, defending state champion and head coach of the Pinkerton Astros, joins us. He had an incredible year last year, and this season they're looking good, 2-1 start. Coach, so glad to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Drew, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, Coach Roye, you guys have known each other for a long time, so I'll let you get this.
Yes, we have. Okay, Drew, people may not know a lot about Mike's basketball background prior to Pinkerton, but Mike was a very accomplished high school player. He won a state championship at Sam.
We actually lost, Coach Roye. We beat Trinity, but we lost to Merrimack in the final.
I remember in those days, beating Trinity was like the state championship.
Exactly. That
was quite a run there. Then you went on to Mount Ida, and if I remember correctly, were you the all-time 3-point leader at Mount Ida when you graduated?
Yeah, when I graduated, I was the all-time leading 3-point. Rest in peace, Mount Ida. They're no longer UMass bottom.
Yes.
I 180 something threes in my career or something like that.
Unbelievable.
It was a good spot for me to land.
And along the way, Mike, you had a chance to play for some incredible coaches. You had Tony Carnevale early in your career. You got to work with Coach K.
Yeah,
he was legendary, and we both love him. And of course, then you went on to play for E.J. Perry.
Yeah,
maybe talk a little bit about how playing for those three different types of personalities helped you as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't let down Tony Carnevale. I mean, I can go back to when I was 7, 8 years old going to Tony Carnevale basketball camp. And he really prepared me, first and foremost, defensively, and things like that. And playing for some of those egos, some of those guys, I mean, it's definitely was different back then. They held you accountable for everything you did. And then I also got to talk about my dad. He coached me from when I was really young to Miles' age, 2 years old, all the way up through about 8th grade. And really playing for my dad really helped me understand. And he was never really too hard on me, which was great. But playing for Tony was definitely hard. But he was a great mentor for me. And then going over to Salem, playing for EJ. I mean, what a great, you would run through a wall for EJ. EJ was an unbelievable motivator, pretty good X's and O's guys. And again, just a phenomenal coach. And then back at Pinkerton playing for Coach K, I mean, he was an assistant when I was there. And just learning from him and hearing all about was it Bishop Bradley where he played? Hearing all the stories of Bishop Bradley,
Trinity now,
and hearing all those stories and of the late greats was really amazing, and really such a great opportunity for me. And I don't think I realized it while I was going through it, but you look back on it now and just some of those special times we had with Coach K and Coach Carnevale. I mean, that was. And then getting the Pinkerton job, the first national anthem, as a head coach, I couldn't stop thinking about Coach C. It was very bittersweet. It was very, surreal, and just such a great opportunity to be the head coach at Pinkerton Academy. It's really, really a cool thing. I also played for Frank Alosa. In AAU. So I mean, I can't look back and all my coaches were top notch, and I think I got a lot of my philosophies from them. Defense first. I don't think that was Frank's philosophy, but he was a great skill teacher. I think he was the best in the area at the time. Just as far as teaching skill work. But yeah, I mean, again, having those mentors was really, really good.
Now, you talked about a lot of great influences, including your dad, but you seem to have left off your older brother, Mark, who was a tremendous player and went on to coach at a very high level in college. And I know Mark finished his college career at Plymouth, where he had a really nice run there. Yeah. He was a great Astro back in the day. What was it like growing up being the little brother to Mark Dunham?
Yeah, honestly, it was great. He was such a good role model for me. He would take me everywhere he went. If he was going to shoot, I went with him to shoot. If he was going to the mall, he brought me with him. If he was doing anything, he'd always include me. And he still coaches today. He's the head coach at Central Catholic down in Mass. Yeah. So we talk every single day about different things. And again, it's more than just coaching too. These are high school kids that we coach, and
Right.
and I really try to get them to know all the kids at a personal level. And I think my brother does the same thing too, because you can't coach every kid the same way nowadays.
Right.
And it's definitely different than what it used to be. But as far as Mark growing up, I mean, he was my number one role model. He actually got to coach me a little bit at Pinkerton. When I was a sophomore, he was an assistant coach. And that year was really, really special to me. Just having him alongside. I mean, it was kind of hard being Mark Dunham's little brother. But I think I took it with pride. He was a better player than I was, that's for sure. And definitely a better shooter. I don't know if he could dribble as good as I could, but he was. But no, he was an unbelievable player. And honestly, just the best role model a younger brother could have.
So all those influences made it almost inevitable that you were going to end up coaching someplace. One other thing, people may not know your brother John is one of the top officials in the state. Is he allowed to do your games, and is there a big brother, little brother dynamic there?
No, he blocks out Pinkerton, so he's not allowed to have any Pinkerton games. And he's a phenomenal referee from what I hear from every coach I talk to, and then when the refs come here, are you John Dunham's brother? I'm like, yeah, but don't hold that against me. You know what I mean? Like that's the running joke. But it's really good to get his point of view too, because I call him after every game, and maybe sometimes I send him film and like, hey, do you think this is a travel or whatever, like just so I can teach my kids, which it's really good to have his opinion on it too. So
great.
it's the whole Dunham family still in basketball, which is great. I feel like we've never left. I've always been a part of it, whether my first job was at Campbell with you, Coach Roye. And, I look back on those memories and, I remember all the kids and the runs we had and, and just learning from you too, as a mentor was phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great working together. And I know you've had some other tremendous influences as a coach. And when I look at where you are right now, I know Drew wants to get into some of the current stuff. But it looks like going to be a challenging season for everybody. The top half of Division I looks pretty strong this year.
Yeah, I think everyone in Division I is pretty good. Every team has a player. At least two or three. There's no runaways this year, which I think is great for the league. I think it's every night. You're in for a battle, and I think that's fun. Last year, you had Austin Bedford, and Nashua North, and we kind of ran away with it from the beginning. But this year, I think any night any team can be beat. So I think that's good. I think it's good for the league, and it definitely should be it's going to be an interesting finish. I think there's going to be teams that you're like, wow, where'd they come from? So it's really cool.
Yeah. Drew, why don't you hop in with, I know you have some questions for Coach.
Yeah, I have a lot, Coach. Thanks. There's a few things that I wanted to ask right off the bat. So one of them is like when you have a Pinkerton, that's obviously a lot different than like a Division III program in terms of the number of kids you have come try out for you. So when you have that, it's very challenging, I know, for coaches during tryouts to figure out how to make cuts. So with Pinkerton, if I'm not mistaken, you guys have like over 100 kids come try out every single year, and you have a varsity, a JV, and I think usually a freshman team. So how do you evaluate during those days of tryouts and make sure you're getting the right kids on rosters and unfortunately having to cut some of those kids?
Yeah, so this year we had around 90 kids try out. Which is really hard, and about 45 freshmen. So we have to break it all up. So all coaches are at all tryouts. So the freshmen will go first, and then I'll put them through all the drills that I want to do, and I'll have all the other coaches evaluate. So this year we have the freshman coach, the JV coach, and each coach has an assistant, and I have an assistant. So they all evaluated kids and really try to get a gauge on the freshmen. Now, with the numbers at Pinkerton, yeah, they're huge. But at the end of the day, we have 6 ascending towns. So that's 6 different middle school teams. when you look at like a Londonderry or a Bedford or a Salem, all those kids are playing together the entire way up, right? So they're playing from a very young age, all together. That's kind of different at Pinkerton, which it's a good problem to have. But again, these kids have never played together before. But again, we're trying to get the best from each school. And going into it, I kind of know I go to a lot of, I've been to a few of the middle school games, and then also at camp, I get a lot of the kids. So going into it, we kind of know who the players are, which is a good thing. But again, there's always that 1, 2, or 10 kids that we've never seen before, and it's like, oh wow, he can really play. But again, we evaluate it. We talk after it's tryouts are the longest day we have all year, which is fun. It's just it's a lot. And a lot goes into it with each kid.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear about that. The next thing I want to ask is last year was your first year as head coach of the Pinkerton program. And when you start out, I think in any division as a head coach, there's a little bit of pressure, I guess. But when you have Pinkerton, which is as big as it is, and as high expectations as you guys had last year with Jackson in his senior year and the incredible starting lineup that you guys had, did you feel a lot of pressure, and how'd you deal with that?
As far as pressure, sure. I mean, I think you have pressure every year to try to win, and I think that comes from all my last mentors. All my previous coaches. They all taught me that you go into a game, you want to win. So as far as pressure, I don't think there was much pressure on myself. I mean, I had a great team. We had 7 or 8 really really good players, and again, it was really my job to screw it up. You know what I mean? So, I think the kids bought into my different style of play right away. I really wanted to be a run and gun type team, even with Jackson. And I think my philosophy is, an open shot's a good shot. An open shot's better than a turnover. Does that create some bad shots? Sure, but it's an opportunity. In high school basketball, you see so much that, if you pass it 4 or 5 times, 6 times, nowadays you're probably going to turn it over. So, if an open shot presents itself, I try to let my kids play loose, and I thought they really did that last year. And then having Jackson was just, it was just a cheat code almost, 6'9", 2, whatever he was, 260, and can shoot threes, and I really saw Jackson grow up last year, not only as a basketball player, but as a person as well. And when that was really nice to see, seeing him at school every day, and really trying to create some of the bad habits that he had. And we did that right away. I know some coaches, have a bad rep for Jackson, but I loved coaching him. You knew exactly what you're going to get from Jackson every single night. And that was 100% effort.
Awesome. Yeah, I talked to Jackson a few times in the past few years, and his skill set is just incredible.
Yeah.
So when you're coaching a guy like that, just how do you deal with not only just like the player on the floor, but also like the attention off the court that travels with him and with your team when you're teaching and coaching, I should say, at like such a high level with Pinkerton? You're getting everybody's best every night.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a always a bullseye on our backs, and I kind of embrace the challenge. I love that. I love being at one of the biggest schools in the state. We just won a state title in football. And we're always usually in it. And that's a good thing. You know what I mean? Like, we're always playing usually late into March, and I love that about it. And it's been like that for a long time. Back when Carnevale and Coach Rosinski and Dave Chase, they did a really good job paving the way. I'm just hoping to, continue that. We're really young this year. So that's a good thing. So the future looks bright. But again, just being at Pinkerton, I've been here my whole life, which is awesome. It's really, really cool thing to be here.
I'd love to hear some stories from last year about some stuff that maybe you don't get an opportunity to talk too much about, but are like really cool, interesting stories of we did this after a game, or this happened and everybody saw this, but nobody saw what actually went into this in practice, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So I always, no matter what team you have, whether you have a 3-17 team, whatever, an undefeated season, you celebrate every win because we only get 18 chances. So after every win, no matter who we played, no matter after every win, we went crazy in the locker room, just because we had 7 seniors last year, 8 seniors or something like that. They only have 18 of these games. And I just remember being in this, actually, when I was a senior at Salem, we celebrated every single win like it was a championship, just because there's only 18 of them. So we celebrate, I get in the middle, we jump up and down, we go crazy, and then we move on. But again, I think celebrating wins, no matter what type of win it is, I think is super important for these kids. I always look back at my senior year, and my senior year was probably the best year of basketball I've ever had at Salem with EJ Perry. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I think that was because he made it so important to the kids. And that's what I'm trying to do here at Pinkerton.
You had the one loss last year during the regular season. How'd you kind of deal with that? Because I think that was one that not a lot of people expected. And how'd you kind of get the locker room together after that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the loss, it was what it was. Dover played phenomenal. I think they hit probably 18 or 19 threes. And that's going to happen. We didn't shoot it great that night. I try to put that in the back of my memory, so I don't really remember the game very much. But, you don't remember the bad ones, right? You only remember the good ones. But so last year I didn't have an assistant coach because I got the job late. So it was just my voice. I actually brought my brother Mark into practice and kind of got a different point of view, just so the kids could hear someone else's voice. And again, he watches every one of my games. I watch every one of his games. And again, I've gone down there and talked to his team too sometimes. And just having them hear the same message come from a different voice really helps sometimes. So I got Mark down there. We had the next day I didn't run him. It was what it was at that point. So we had a good competitive practice. And we went back to the basics defensively. And again, I think most of it last year was our defense. I mean, we were scoring 90 a game for like 7 or 8 games. But again, it just came down to, effort, and I think the effort part of it, I will never coach effort. Like if you start coaching effort, it's going to be a long year. If you have to coach effort in any sport, if you have to coach effort, I think it's just a long, long year. And that's the hardest part. Overall, the loss, I think, actually was good for us. It gave me a little bit of ammo. I was like, hey, we can be beat. So when they do take their time off in practice, we lost the Dover guys, And I will say something about that team last year. They were by far the worst practice team I have ever been around in the world, ever. They did not practice well at all. I know in some of the interviews, I'm like, yeah, we had 2 great practices. I'm like, what? I just lied to everybody. They were the worst practicing team, probably in the country in high school basketball. But I knew what I was going to get from the players once the lights turned on. So again, we got a lot of shots up in practice, but I knew exactly what I was going to get from them when the lights turned on.
Can I jump in for a second, Drew?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, couple of things I wanted to bounce off you, Mike. One of them is people don't always understand the Londonderry-Pinkerton rivalry. I mean, for my money, that's the best in the state, and it goes across sports. You have that whole Mac Plaque thing that happens. Talk a little bit about what it's like to walk into your gym in Pinkerton, where you've lived your entire life practically, and see the kind of crowd and hear the kind of, the noise just washes over you in those situations. It's incredible. So talk a little bit about the Londonderry rivalry. Yeah.
So it's always been a rivalry. Again, I can remember going to games back in the day when Pinkerton was playing in the Shepherd building without the Hackler even there, and the Pinkerton Londonderry rivalry has always been great. And it's getting back to where it was. The rivalry is awesome, and we haven't really talked about this, but I was at Londonderry for 10 years with Nate Stanton. I was the assistant coach for Londonderry for 10 years. I was JV coach for 1 or 2, and then I went over to Pinkerton. But again, the Londonderry-Pinkerton rivalry in every sport is just amazing, and it's a good rivalry. The coach over there is a really good guy. He actually lives in Raymond too, Coach Piachuch. So, and we talk sometimes too, and go back and forth. But the rivalry's fun. It's always a boy-girl doubleheader, which is awesome. And it's just, like any rivalry, those games, it doesn't matter how good you are. Even last year, it didn't matter how good we were. You'd never know, Londonderry could beat us just because it is Pinkerton and Londonderry.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, having gone to some of those over the years, it's a different level of noise and intensity from the crowd, and the crowds are very knowledgeable, and it seems like such a wonderful thing in all sports, football and basketball.
Well, last year our biggest game was the Bedford game. And I want to bring that up just because in the 20 years, 30 years I've been going to games, I've never seen the Hackler that packed before in my life. There was standing room only. The other side of the bleachers are out.
Oh, wow.
And, and that's why you play. I mean, there was over 2,500 people in Derry watching Pinkerton and Bedford go at it. And, that's why you play. That's why you coach. And people, the nerves, I'm like, there's no nerves. At the end of the day, it's not a math test. You know what I mean? It's a basketball game. And that's why I tell the kids too. I'm like, hey guys, this is basketball. This is what you guys do. Let's go out and have some fun with it. Go show these people what you can do. And, and that's how it's going to be at Londonderry this year. I think the game's going to be packed because Londonderry is really pretty good this year. So that will be a fun matchup.
Yeah. I was at the Bedford game last year, Coach, and I would agree with you. That's the most packed I've ever seen a high school gym. That was incredible. Last thing I wanted to get to before we got to this year was I was also at the state championship game against Nashua North, and you guys got off to a good start, if I recall correctly, and then they really pushed you guys going into halftime, and then you guys responded really well in the second half to win the championship. Can you take us through that game?
Yeah, so the first half we came out and we really blitzed them. I think we went up by like 22-10, if I remember correctly, or something like that. And then I think we got tired. I think the college floor got us tired a little bit in the second quarter. And honestly, their run started, if I remember correctly, with like 2 minutes to go in the second quarter. And in my mind, I'm like, I think it was a tie score. I'm like, all right, well, their runs right now, and it's a game of runs, right? You knew they were going to make a run. It's just when they were going to do it. And they did it with 2 minutes left. I'm like, do I call a timeout or do I save them? And I still look back, I'm like, should I use one? But the run couldn't have happened for us any better because we had halftime. They went up 5, they hit a 3 at the buzzer. So it was like, okay, so they were up 2, then they hit a buzzer beat of 3. And then they all celebrated, and I was like, good. Perfect. That run happened for us at the best time it could have happened. Right. And that's what I told my coaching staff too. I'm like, look, that run is over now. It's a different half. They're going a different way now. But I walked in the locker room, all my kids' heads were down. I was like, guys, it's 5 points. We've scored 5 points in 20 seconds. So it's like, why are our heads down? We're not down by that many. And then we came out and we went on a 4-0 run, and then they went on another little run. If I remember that we got down by 8 at one point. But after rewatching that, watching Charlie Ludden, I think Charlie Ludden was very underappreciated by a lot of people. He was our X factor. I know Drew Brander and Jackson played phenomenal, but I mean, he guarded Parth McGlarney, who's a phenomenal player. Parth was what I thought Parth was a top 3 player in the state last year. And Charlie Ludden held him to 0 field goals. The defense that Charlie played on him, I mean, and that was kind of our game plan going in. Don't let him get going, because if he got going, it was going to be a long night for us. Charlie didn't let him get the ball, blocked his shots a couple times. But Charlie Ludden was an X factor for me all year. I can't talk enough about that kid. And I still tell him to this day, he's going to school at UNH right now. I tell him to this day, I'm like, the fact that you're not playing college basketball is beyond me. I think he could have played Division III somewhere very easily, and continued his basketball career. But I'll definitely send this to Charlie, because he deserves so much praise, because I know Jackson and Drew got a lot of the highlights and a lot of the paper articles, but Charlie Ludden was unbelievable all year.
I would agree. I saw those guys all play a few times last year, and yeah, all those guys were great.
Yeah, yeah, they
Final thing
were.
I want to ask you is just talk about your team that you have this year, and then kind of the challenge associated with this season.
Yeah, sure. So this year we're very young. We bring back our point guard Parker Bienvenuta, who's great, and Christian Brander, who I think has a state record for 11 threes in a game against Portsmouth last year. I mean, he was on fire that night. So he's seen a lot of different defenses thrown at him. But we're super young, which is great. Um, Brady Sullivan is probably probably one of our best players. He was on the team last year as a sophomore, and he probably could have played, but we just had so many guys, in that role in his role, that he just didn't get in much last year. And then we have Connor Dempsey, who's a good player. It was on the team last year as well. And then our JV team went to I think the semifinal of the JV tournament last year. So we have a 6'5" kid, Adam Ajuz, who's been really good so far. And then Wilson Youssef, who's a point guard, is really good this year. He's a junior. He's about 6'2", 6'3". He's still growing. He's really good with the ball. And then back from injury, we got Ryan Bonilla back. He would have played last year. He would have been in the rotation last year. And we got him back, which is great. He was on the bench all year last year. He had to have hip surgery. But this year it brings different, different challenges. We're pretty small this year, I can't remember the last time Pinkerton had a small team. I joke around with my brother Mark, because Central's the same way. They're small. Central Catholic's small, and we're small. And it's like, what you think of Central Catholic, and you think of Scott Hazelton, who was 6'8". You think of all these big guys that went through that program. And again, last year I had Jackson Marshall. It's like, where are all these guys now? Where are all my big bruisers? But it's really fun going to work with these kids every day. They're still learning, which is a good thing. And it's going to be a fun year. I love this group. They work tremendously hard. This is a better practicing team than last year, so that's a good thing.
Well, there you go.
So I enjoy going to practice with these guys, because they really bring it every day. And again, our goal is to be good in late February, early March. So we're just working on getting better and better every day. And we take it a week at a time. This week we got Alvern on Friday, which is a tough matchup. And then we got Bedford and Winnicott next week. So again, some pretty good teams coming up in the near future. Right now we're 2-1. With I think Nashville South is great. I thought we played pretty good defense against Mr. Caruso over at Nashville South, but their other guys really stepped up. They're big, but I think we're up 9 or 10 in the first half against South. And then we got into a little bit of foul trouble. But again, I think these kids are working hard and they want to win, so that's a good thing.
Awesome. That's all for me, Coach Roye. Do you have anything?
Just I think you talked about the experience of the crowds and the big games, and why you play and why you coach, and I think the joy in high school coaching is often the changeover to a new team and a new challenge and new personalities. And when I think about Pinkerton, everybody talks about the size of the school, and I know in the past that they've cut kids who would probably been all state in Division II. Just didn't have enough. So, are you enjoying the new challenge? Are you enjoying having to prepare differently and teach a little differently with a smaller, younger team?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely more game planning, watching a lot more film this year. I actually brought on Chris Lutz as my assistant coach.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so Chris Lutz, he went full boat to Purdue, is in one shining moment. He played professional over in the Philippines. Having his knowledge is really helpful this year for me. And especially developing, player development with that too. Having Chris there is awesome. I'm enjoying, seeing the growth of kids. And again, it's more, I found out, last year that it's more than just coaching. it's being not a counselor, but like,
right.
Understanding that, this kid's going through something outside of basketball. And that's why, he's turning the ball over. His mind's not on it. So really trying to get them to understand that focusing on, while we're here, getting what we need to get done. Sorry, that's hoops. That's my dog.
Yeah.
Hoops. It's really been a fun year so far. I'm really looking forward to the challenges moving forward. It should be a fun year. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, looking at the schedule and the teams, there really aren't any nights off. And
No.
You've mentioned the lessons the kids have learned a little bit from the South game. My guess would be along the line there might be a few more lessons.
Yeah.
Just because they're 16-year-old kids and you can't always predict how they're going to be. But I think it's probably something you'll look back on with a lot of happiness, that you're competing against these programs with these great coaches, night in and night out. I mean, that kind of competition is what makes sports so much fun. It's nice to be in the role of the surprise team.
Right. It is. It's definitely different. But you talk about the other coaches around the state. I mean, I had the Alvern coach at my Christmas tournament game yesterday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, down in Westford Academy, it's I think coaches are really prepared every game. With Huddle now, it's easy to get game film. And I share my game film with anybody just because you're going to get it anyway. So
they're going to find it, right?
We're going to, whether it's online or whether it's, on NFHS or, Friday Night Lights, or, you'll figure out a way to find the game. But it's really fun right now to be in New Hampshire basketball. I think the product's getting better and better. And it's really, really nice to see.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Christmas tournament, and I would be remiss if I didn't remind you of the wonderful run we had years ago. I was telling Drew about an offhanded comment I made to you on the bench that ended up in the newspaper because the reporter was right behind our bench. that was a lot of fun. And I still, this year I stopped by Campbell in the preseason. Hannah Neal, the girls coach, had invited me to come to tryouts, and there are still people there talking about that run. So you and I are etched in Campbell lore, I think.
Absolutely, that run was great. I think we beat Nashua.
We beat North and Alvern.
And Alvern,
back to back.
Back-to-back games, and those kids could play. They're very well coached. They're very well coached.
There you go. So anyway, congratulations on everything, Mike. And I'm hoping we can get out to a game this year.
Catch
the Astros
absolutely.
in action.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
We can get Drew TV out there to cover you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you come out, dinner's on me, Coach.
Okay. Well, listen, thanks a lot, Mike. We really enjoyed having you. I imagine Drew might be chasing you down a little bit before the tournament to come on again and talk a little bit about the upcoming tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to speak for you, Drew, if you want to jump in there and.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you back at some point, Coach.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So much for
coming on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and Happy New Year, guys.